A terrified girl emerged from the fog, screaming that her mother was hanging from a tree, stopping a convoy of black luxury cars dead in their tracks. She didn't know she had signaled Ramon Ortega, a ruthless crime lord. But instead of driving away, he led his hitmen into the woods to cut the woman down. Now, the men who tortured this family are about to learn that the forest has a new apex predator. If this story pulled you in, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss what's coming next. I've got another unforgettable story dropping tomorrow. And while you're here, jump into the comments and tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing our community from all around the world. Alright, let's get back into it. The fog came in low that morning, rolling across the forest road like something with intention. It swallowed the pavement in thick gray waves, muffling sound, and turning the towering pines into dark silhouettes that could have been watching or sleeping. The air tasted of damp earth and moss, cold enough to sting the lungs. Nothing moved, nothing made a sound, until she appeared. The little girl materialized from the mist like a ghost taking shape, her dusty rose dress torn and streaked with mud that looked almost black in the dim light. She ran barefoot down the center of the road, her arms pumping frantically, her breath coming in ragged gasps that tore from her chest. She wasn't jogging, she wasn't playing, she was running for her life. Her feet slapped against the wet asphalt, leaving bloody prints that vanished into the fog behind her. Her dark hair hung in tangled ropes across her face, and when she stumbled, catching herself on trembling hands before pushing upright again, the sound echoed like a gunshot in the silence. She ran until she saw them. 2 black luxury cars sat in formation across both lanes, engines idling with the deep purr of expensive machinery. They blocked the road completely, as if they'd been waiting for something, or someone. Chrome gleamed through the mist. Tinted windows reflected nothing but gray. The vehicles looked like they'd been carved from shadow and steel. The little girl didn't hesitate. She didn't slow down. She ran straight toward them, her voice breaking the morning open. "Help!" The word ripped from her throat, raw and desperate. "Please, someone help." The door of the lead car opened. A man stepped out with the unhurried grace of someone accustomed to control. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a black suit with a black shirt beneath no tie. The suit jacket hung open, revealing intricate tattoos that covered his chest and crawled up his neck in bold patterns, symbols, and script that told stories most people wouldn't want to read. More ink decorated both his hands, visible even from a distance. His dark hair was slicked back, his face composed and unreadable. He looked dangerous in the way expensive things often are. His name was Ramon Ortega, and in certain circles, that name carried weight that could crush bones. Behind him, 2 more car doors opened in synchronized silence. 3 men emerged, each wearing dark suits with white shirts and ties, each moving with the same disciplined precision. They spread out naturally, hands resting near concealed weapons, eyes scanning the fog-choked tree line with the practiced vigilance of soldiers. These were not bodyguards. They were an extension of Ramon's will. The little girl stumbled toward Ramon, her legs finally betraying her. She collapsed to her knees 3 feet from his polished shoes, mud splashing across the pavement. Her hands shot out toward him, fingers curled like claws. "They hung my mom on a tree," she sobbed, the words tumbling out between gasps. "Please, you have to save her, please." Ramon looked down at her without moving. His expression didn't change. He didn't kneel. He didn't reach out. He simply studied her with dark eyes that missed nothing. The rope burns, circling her thin wrists like brutal bracelets. The way her entire body shook with exhaustion and terror, the dirt under her fingernails from clawing at something. Or someone. One of his men stepped forward. "Boss." Ramon raised one hand. Silence fell instantly. The little girl's sobs filled the void, desperate and broken. "Please," she whispered, her voice cracking. "She's still there. They left her hanging. Please." Ramon tilted his head slightly, still watching her. Calculating. Reading. The child wasn't hysterical. She was traumatized. There was a difference. He'd seen enough of both to know. "Where?" His voice was quiet, controlled, carrying no emotion whatsoever. The girl lifted a shaking hand and pointed toward the forest, toward a wall of trees that disappeared into fog so thick it looked solid. "In there, not far. I ran so fast." Her voice broke completely. She doubled over, pressing her muddy forehead against the cold pavement. Ramon glanced at his men. No words were spoken. None were needed. The engines shut off one by one. Car doors closed with soft final clicks. The 3 men moved into formation around Ramon without being told, hands now resting openly on weapons concealed beneath their jackets. Ramon looked down at the child again. "Stand up." The girl struggled to her feet, swaying dangerously. Ramon caught her elbow, not gently but not roughly either, and steadied her. She stared up at him with wide, red-rimmed eyes that held more hope than any child should ever have to place in a stranger, especially a stranger like him. "You lead," Ramon said simply. "We follow." The girl nodded frantically, already turning toward the forest. She took 3 steps before her legs buckled again. This time, Ramon didn't wait. He lifted her effortlessly, settling her against his side with one arm. She weighed almost nothing. "Hold on," he said. Not a suggestion, a command. She wrapped her arms around his neck and buried her face against his shoulder. He felt her tears soaking through his expensive suit jacket. He ignored it. Ramon moved toward the tree line, his men falling into tactical formation around him, 1 ahead, 2 on the flanks. They entered the forest as a single unit, swallowed immediately by fog and shadow. The trail the girl directed them down was barely visible, more animal path than human road. Branches clawed at their suits. Roots tried to trip them. The fog grew thicker, pressing close like something alive and curious. The temperature dropped 10 degrees in as many steps. Ramon felt the child's heartbeat slamming against his chest, a frantic percussion that matched the increasing tension in the air. His men moved silently, weapons now drawn, eyes sharp. They knew this feeling. They'd walked into ambushes before. But this was different. This felt heavier, wronger. The forest opened suddenly, the trees pulling back like curtains revealing a stage. A clearing lay ahead, circular and unnaturally empty, and in its center stood a massive oak tree, ancient and gnarled, its branches spreading wide like judgment. Hanging from those branches, swaying slightly in a breeze that didn't exist anywhere else, was a woman. The little girl screamed. Ramon's expression didn't change, but his grip on the child tightened, and his other hand moved to his weapon. "Check her," he said quietly. One of his men sprinted forward. The man who reached Elena Smith first was named Victor, a former military operative whose hands had seen more violence than most people could imagine. But as he pressed 2 fingers against the woman's neck, searching for a pulse beneath cold skin, those same hands trembled. "She's alive," he called back, his voice tight. Barely. Ramon didn't acknowledge the relief that should have followed those words. Relief was a luxury. Action was a necessity. He shifted Maria in his arms, turning her face away from the sight of her mother hanging limp against the ropes. "Don't look," he said quietly. It wasn't comfort. It was an order. Maria buried her face deeper into his shoulder, her small body shaking with sobs that had no sound left in them. She'd screamed herself empty. Ramon's other 2 men moved with immediate precision. One, Diego, pulled a tactical knife from his belt and began scaling the tree with the efficiency of someone who'd done harder climbs under worse conditions. The other, Mateo, positioned himself beneath Elena, arms raised, ready to catch her weight the moment the ropes were cut. Ramon watched them work, his mind already 3 steps ahead. Whoever had done this wasn't far. Rope burns on Maria's wrists meant she'd been restrained. The fresh mud on her dress meant she'd fallen multiple times while running. The terror in her eyes meant the men who'd hung her mother were the kind who made examples, not idle threats. They were still close. They had to be. "How long?" Ramon asked Maria, his voice low and even. The girl lifted her head slightly, confusion crossing her tear-streaked face. "What? How long ago did they leave?" Maria's eyes went distant, trying to process time through trauma. I don't know. Not long. Maybe they're still." Her voice cracked. "They said they'd come back. They said if anyone tried to help, They're not coming back," Ramon interrupted, his tone flat and final. He didn't explain. He didn't need to. Above them, Diego's knife sawed through the thick rope with deliberate care. "Ready," he called down to Mateo. "Go." The rope parted with a sound like a sigh. Elena's body dropped, and Mateo caught her with surprising gentleness, lowering her immediately to the damp ground. Victor was beside her in seconds, checking vitals, assessing damage with hands that moved like a doctor's despite belonging to a man who specialized in causing harm, not healing it. "Pulse is weak but steady," Victor reported, his fingers moving from her neck to her wrists, examining the deep rope burns that had cut into flesh. "Possible hypothermia. Shock. She needs a hospital." "No hospitals," Ramon said immediately. All 3 men looked at him. They knew better than to question, but the silence itself was a question. Ramon set Maria down gently, keeping one hand on her shoulder to steady her. She immediately tried to run to her mother, but he held her back with quiet firmness. "Not yet. Let them work. But she's alive because we got here in time." She stays alive if you let my men help her." Ramon's dark eyes held the girl's gaze. "Trust me or don't, but if you trust me, you listen." Maria swallowed hard and nodded, her small hand gripping Ramon's jacket so tightly her knuckles went white. Ramon pulled out his phone with his free hand, dialing without looking at the screen. The call connected on the first ring. "I need a medical team," he said, his voice clipped and businesslike. "Woman, mid-30s, exposure, rope, trauma, possible shock. Discrete location, 20 minutes. He paused, listening. "No, not the clinic. The safe house on Riverside. Send Torres." He ended the call and pocketed the phone, his attention returning to his men. Diego had descended from the tree and was examining the surrounding area with predator's focus, reading the forest floor like a book written in disturbed leaves and broken branches. "Boss," he called quietly. "Tracks. Fresh. 3, maybe 4 men. Heavy boots. Heading northeast." Ramon's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "How fresh?" Diego crouched, touching the edge of a boot print in the soft earth. "Minutes. They could still be within a quarter mile." The air in the clearing changed. All 3 men felt it, the shift from rescue operation to something colder, sharper, something they knew better than anything else. Ramon looked down at Maria. "Your mother, what's her name?" "Elena," Maria whispered. "Elena Smith. Elena is going to be fine. My men will take care of her. But I need you to stay here with Victor while we—" "No." Maria's grip on his jacket became desperate. "Don't leave me. Please. They'll come back." "They said they won't come back," Ramon said again. And this time there was something in his voice that made the promise sound like a death sentence for someone else. "I'm going to make sure of that." He gently pried Maria's fingers from his jacket and guided her to Victor, who had removed his suit jacket and draped it over Elena's unconscious form. "Stay with your mother," Ramon instructed. "Victor will keep you both safe. If anyone comes who isn't us, he'll handle it." Victor met Ramon's eyes and nodded once. His hand moved to rest on the weapon concealed at his hip. Ramon turned to Diego and Mateo. No words were exchanged. None were needed. The 3 men moved as one toward the northeast trail, leaving Victor crouched between Maria and her mother like a suited guardian angel with a gun. Maria watched them disappear into the fog, her voice barely a whisper. "Where's he going?" Victor checked Elena's pulse again, his expression carefully neutral. "To send a message." "What kind of message?" Victor was quiet for a long moment, listening to the forest. In the distance, through the thick fog and ancient trees, he thought he heard voices, shouting, then nothing. "The permanent kind," he said finally. Maria didn't understand, not fully. But as she curled up beside her mother's still form, feeling the faint rise and fall of Elena's chest, some part of her, the part that had run barefoot through a nightmare, and somehow found exactly the right dangerous man to trust, understood enough. The forest had swallowed Ramon Ortega and his men like they'd never existed, but the forest would remember what came next. Victor worked in silence, his hands moving with practiced efficiency over Elena's cold body. He'd seen worse, much worse, but something about finding a woman strung up like a warning sign in the middle of nowhere made his jaw clench harder than usual. Maria sat pressed against his side, her dusty rose dress still damp with mud and morning dew, her eyes locked on her mother's face. Elena's skin had taken on a grayish pallor that made her look more ghost than human. Her chest rose and fell in shallow, irregular rhythms that Victor didn't like at all. "Is she going to wake up?" Maria's voice was small, scraped raw from screaming. Victor pulled a tactical blanket from the pack he always carried and spread it over Elena, tucking it carefully around her shoulders. "She will, but not yet." Her body shut down to protect itself. "It's trying to recover." "From what?" Victor hesitated. "How did you explain to a child what hanging from a tree by your wrists for hours did to the human body? The way circulation cut off, how muscles screamed, how the mind fractured under that kind of sustained agony? From being very scared for a very long time," he said finally. Maria nodded slowly, accepting this answer because she understood fear intimately now. She'd lived inside it for hours that felt like years. "Why did they do it?" she whispered. "My mom didn't hurt anybody. She works at the diner. She brings me to school. She reads to me before bed." Her voice cracked. Why would someone hang her from a tree? Victor had no good answer for that. In his experience, cruelty rarely needed justification beyond the simple fact that some men enjoyed wielding power over those who couldn't fight back. But he couldn't say that to a child whose world had just been shattered. Some people are broken inside, he said instead. And broken people break things. Maria processed this, her small fingers twisting the fabric of his suit jacket that still covered her mother. Is Mr. Ortega broken? Victor's eyebrows rose slightly. It was a more perceptive question than he'd expected. Why do you ask? Because he didn't smile. Not even once. And his eyes. Maria struggled to find the words. They looked empty, like nobody's home. Victor checked Elena's pulse again, still weak, still there, and considered how to answer. Ramon Ortega was many things. Dangerous, powerful, absolutely ruthless when circumstances demanded it. But broken? That was complicated. Mr. Ortega isn't empty, Victor said carefully. He's careful. He's seen a lot of bad things, and he's done what he needed to do to survive them. That changes a person. Did it change you? Victor met the little girl's eyes and saw a sharpness there that survival had honed. She wasn't asking to be polite. She genuinely wanted to understand the men who'd materialized from the fog to save her mother. Yes, he admitted. It did. But you still helped us. Yes. So maybe Mr. Ortega isn't broken. Maybe he's just... Maria searched for the word. Careful, like you said. Victor almost smiled. Almost. Maybe. A sound cut through the forest, distant but distinct. A shout. Then another. The unmistakable crack of something that might have been a branch snapping or might have been something else entirely. Maria tensed, her hand shooting out to grip Victor's arm. What was that? Ramon, Victor said simply. His hand moved to rest on his weapon, though he didn't draw it. Not yet. His eyes scanned the tree line, cataloging every shadow, every shift in the fog. Is he okay? He's fine. How do you know? Because if he wasn't, we'd be hearing a lot more noise. Another sound drifted through the trees, this time unmistakably, a voice raised in pain or fear, abruptly cut short. Then silence rushed back in like water filling a void. Maria's breathing quickened. They're hurting someone. Yes. The men who hurt my mom? Yes. Maria was quiet for a long moment, processing this. Victor expected tears, or fear, or maybe moral confusion about violence being answered with violence. Instead, the little girl's voice came out cold and flat in a way that made her sound much older than her years. Good. Victor glanced down at her, surprised by the steel in that single word. Maria stared into the fog where Ramon and the others had disappeared, her jaw set, her eyes hard. They hung my mom from a tree like she was trash. Maria continued, her voice shaking now, but not with fear, with rage. They tied me up and made me watch. They laughed. One of them said. She stopped, swallowing hard. He said nobody would care. That people like us don't matter. Victor's hand tightened on his weapon. What else did they say? Maria shook her head. I don't remember all of it. There were 4 of them. They wore masks, but I could see their eyes. One of them had a tattoo on his hand, a snake eating its own tail. Another one smelled like cigarettes and something sweet, like cologne, but bad. Victor filed away these details automatically. Ramon would want them later. If there was anything left to identify. They said they'd come back tomorrow to check on things, Maria whispered. They said it like it was funny. Like my mom hanging there was a joke. They won't be coming back, Victor said. And there was finality in his voice that even a child could recognize as absolute truth. Because of Mr. Ortega? Because of Mr. Ortega. Maria looked back at her mother's still form, at the shallow rise and fall of her chest, at the angry rope burns circling her wrists like brands. Then she looked up at Victor with eyes that had aged a decade in a single morning. I'm glad I ran to him, she said quietly. I'm glad I didn't run away. So is your mother, Victor replied. Even if she doesn't know it yet. In the distance, the forest had gone completely silent. No birds, no wind, no voices, just the heavy, expectant quiet of a place where something irreversible had just occurred. Victor checked his watch. 15 minutes since Ramon had left. The medical team would arrive in 5. Elena would survive. Maria would survive. And somewhere in the fog, 4 men were learning the cost of cruelty. The sound of an engine cut through the forest, silence low, powerful, deliberate. Victor's head snapped up, his weapon already halfway out of its holster, before he recognized the distinct purr of Ramon's Mercedes navigating the narrow trail. Stay down, he instructed Maria, positioning himself between her and the approaching vehicle. But it was Ramon who emerged from the fog first, walking ahead of the car that rolled slowly behind him. His black suit was pristine except for a few leaves clinging to his shoulders. His expression remained as unreadable as ever. though Victor, who'd worked with him for 7 years, noticed the slight tension in his jaw, the way his knuckles were reddened. Behind him, Diego drove, while Mateo sat in the passenger seat, both men's faces carved from stone. Ramon's eyes went immediately to Elena's motionless form, then to Maria, then to Victor. Status? Stable but critical, Victor reported. Pulse is strengthening. No signs of internal bleeding, but she needs proper medical attention. Hypothermia is setting in. Ramon nodded once, then crouched beside Maria. The little girl stared at him with wide eyes, searching his face for something: answers, reassurance, confirmation of what she'd heard in the distance. "Your mother is going to a safe place," Ramon said, his voice quiet but clear. "Doctors will take care of her. You'll stay with her the entire time." "What about those men?" Maria whispered. Ramon held her gaze. "They won't bother anyone again." Something in the simplicity of that statement, the absolute certainty, made Maria's shoulders drop slightly, as if a weight she'd been carrying finally lifted. She didn't ask how. She didn't ask what happened. Some truths didn't need elaboration. "Thank you," she breathed. Ramon stood without acknowledging the gratitude, already moving to help Victor lift Elena. They worked in synchronized silence, Ramon supporting her shoulders while Victor took her legs, transferring her carefully into the back seat of the Mercedes. Diego had already spread additional blankets across the leather, preparing a makeshift stretcher. "Maria, get in," Ramon instructed, holding the door open. The girl scrambled inside, immediately positioning herself beside her mother, one small hand clutching Elena's cold fingers. Ramon slid in after her, his large frame filling the remaining space. Victor moved to the front passenger seat while Diego maintained his position behind the wheel. "Go," Ramon said simply. The Mercedes reversed with surprising agility down the narrow trail, Diego's hands steady on the wheel despite the treacherous terrain. Branches scraped against windows like skeletal fingers trying to hold them back. The fog pressed close, making it nearly impossible to see more than 10 feet ahead. But Diego had driven worse roads under worse conditions. His eyes never left the path. In the back seat, Ramon monitored Elena's breathing, his fingers resting lightly on her wrist to track her pulse. Weak, but present, consistent. The human body was remarkably resilient when given a chance. Maria watched him with an intensity that might have been uncomfortable if Ramon had cared about comfort. "Are you a doctor?" she asked. "No, but you know what to do. I've seen enough injuries to know when someone will survive them. And my mom will survive?" Ramon's dark eyes met hers. Yes, the certainty in that single word seemed to anchor something inside Maria. Her grip on her mother's hand loosened slightly, the panic that had been driving her forward for hours finally beginning to recede. The Mercedes broke free from the forest trail and onto the main road, acceleration smooth and immediate. The fog thinned as they left the woods behind, morning light struggling through gray clouds overhead. "ETA?" Ramon asked. 12 minutes, Diego replied, his foot pressing harder on the accelerator. The speedometer climbed steadily. Victor pulled out his phone, typing rapidly. "Torres confirms medical team is in position. Surgical suite prepped if needed. Blood supply ready. Good." Maria's head swiveled between the men, processing the efficiency of their communication, the way they moved like parts of a single machine. "Where are we going?" "You said not a hospital. Somewhere safer," Ramon replied. "Somewhere the men who hurt your mother have no connections, no reach, no way to finish what they started. But there..." Maria hesitated, glancing toward the forest disappearing behind them. "They're not going to finish anything, are they?" "No." The word hung in the air, final as a closing door. The Mercedes ate up the miles, luxury suspension smoothing out imperfections in the road that would have rattled a lesser vehicle. Inside, Elena's breathing began to deepen slightly, her body's survival mechanism slowly engaging now that she was warm, horizontal, and relatively safe. "She moved," Maria said suddenly, her voice sharp with hope. "Her fingers, I felt them move." Victor turned in his seat to look. "Reflex. Her nervous system is coming back online." "That's good. But she's not waking up?" "Not yet. Maybe not for hours. Her mind needs time to process what happened. Sometimes the body heals faster than the brain allows." Maria absorbed this, her thumb stroking her mother's hand in small, repetitive circles. "Will she remember what they did?" "Probably," Victor said honestly. "But memories lose their teeth over time, especially when you survive them." "I'll remember too," Maria said quietly. "Forever." Ramon glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "Yes, you will." "Is that bad?" "That depends on what you do with the memory." Maria considered this, her young mind working through concepts most children never had to contemplate. What should I do with it? Survive. Grow stronger. Make sure no one ever has that kind of power over you again. It wasn't comfort. It wasn't therapy. It was the cold pragmatism of someone who understood that trauma could destroy or forge, and the choice, however unfair, ultimately belonged to the survivor. "We're here," Diego announced, turning onto a tree-lined private drive that led to a sprawling estate hidden behind high walls and iron gates that opened automatically as they approached. A medical team waited at the entrance, 3 people in surgical scrubs, a gurney ready, equipment bags in hand. The Mercedes stopped smoothly. Doors opened in coordinated sequence, and Elena Smith, still unconscious but breathing steadily, was transferred into hands that knew exactly how to pull her back from the edge. Maria started to follow the gurney, but Ramon's hand on her shoulder stopped her gently. "Let them work first. 5 minutes. Then you can stay with her as long as you want." Maria nodded, watching her mother disappear through pristine white doors. She was still alive. They both were, and that was enough. The safe house was a study in contradictions. Luxury wrapped around security, elegance concealing violence. Crystal chandeliers hung above surveillance monitors. Marble floors gleamed beneath weapon racks hidden behind false panels. It was the kind of place where men like Ramon Ortega conducted business that never appeared in ledgers or court documents. Maria sat in an oversized leather chair in the study, her muddy feet dangling inches above the Persian rug. Someone had brought her warm tea that she hadn't touched and a blanket she'd wrapped around herself like armor. Through the open doorway, she could see medical personnel moving efficiently around her mother in the adjacent room. Ramon stood by the window, phone pressed to his ear, his voice low and controlled. Victor had disappeared somewhere into the depths of the house. Diego and Mateo remained outside, standing guard like silent sentinels. "Yes," Ramon said into the phone. "Complete discretion. No police reports, no records." A pause. "Because I said so." He ended the call and pocketed the device, his attention shifting to Maria. The little girl stared back at him with eyes that had seen too much, understood too little, but trusted completely. "Your mother is stable," Ramon said. "The doctors are closing the lacerations on her wrists. She'll have scars, but she'll heal." Maria nodded slowly. "Can I see her?" "Soon. They're finishing." The door burst open. Victor entered with swift purpose, his expression darker than usual. He carried a tablet in one hand and held it out to Ramon without preamble. "We have a problem." Ramon took the device, his eyes scanning whatever was displayed there. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, the only outward sign of whatever he was processing. "Show me." Victor tapped the screen, and Maria watched Ramon's face as he absorbed information she couldn't see. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. "When?" Ramon asked. "While we were en route. Diego found them at the clearing after we left. Fresh prints. He photographed everything before the medical team arrived." Ramon handed the tablet back, his mind already working through implications and responses. He glanced at Maria, then back to Victor. "Take her to her mother. Stay with them both. Boss." Now, Victor understood the dismissal for what it was, protection, not disrespect. He extended a hand to Maria. "Come on, your mom is asking for you." Maria's face lit up. "She's awake?" "Just barely. But she wants to see you." The little girl scrambled from the chair and took Victor's hand, casting one backward glance at Ramon before disappearing through the doorway. Ramon waited until he heard the door to Elena's room close before speaking. "Diego," he called, not raising his voice. The man appeared in the doorway within seconds, as if he'd been waiting for the summons, which he had been. "Sir, show me everything." Diego pulled out his own phone, swiping through a series of photographs with methodical precision. "I went back after we loaded Elena into the car. Wanted to document the scene in case we needed evidence later." He held out the phone. Ramon took it, his eyes narrowing as he studied the images. The clearing looked different in the photographs, less ethereal, more clinical. The massive oak tree dominated the frame, rope still dangling from its branches like a severed limb. But it was the ground that told the real story. Boot prints. Dozens of them. Some old, trampled into mud by the initial attack, but others fresh, deep, purposeful, cutting across the clearing in a path that led away from the tree. "These weren't there when we arrived," Ramon said. "It wasn't a question." "No, sir. I'm certain. I checked the perimeter when we first entered. These tracks were made after we left. Someone came back." Ramon swiped to the next image, a closer shot of the prints, with Diego's tactical knife placed beside them for scale. Large boots, heavy tread, military-grade soles, the kind worn by men who expected trouble and dressed accordingly. 4 separate patterns, Diego continued. 4 different men. They approached from the northeast, same direction the original attackers fled. They stopped at the tree, likely discovered the cut rope, then spread out. Searching. Yes, sir. Looking for the bodies of their friends, would be my guess. When they didn't find them, they regrouped here. Diego swiped again, showing a cluster of prints near the oak's massive trunk. They stood here for several minutes. You can see where the ground is more disturbed, like they were arguing. Ramon studied the image, his tactical mind reconstructing the scene. 4 men returning to find their companions gone. No blood, no bodies, just an empty clearing and a cut rope. They would have questions. And men with questions often made dangerous decisions. They followed our trail, Ramon said quietly. Diego nodded grimly. Tracked us back to the main road. I found prints near where we'd parked the cars. They would have seen the tire marks, the direction we went. Did they follow further? Unknown. I lost the trail on the asphalt. But sir, Diego hesitated, which was unusual for him. They know someone interfered. They know their operation was compromised, and they're looking for whoever did it. Ramon handed the phone back, his expression carved from ice. How many did we leave in the woods? 3 confirmed. The 4th escaped during the initial confrontation, took off running before we could secure him. Description? Medium build. Wore a red jacket. Moves fast. Mateo winged him with a shot, but he made it to a vehicle we didn't know was there. Dirt bike by the sound of it. Ramon was silent for a long moment, processing variables and calculating risks. 4 men returning to the clearing meant the original group was larger than they'd anticipated. Organized. Coordinated. The kind of crew that didn't take losses lightly. And now they knew someone had interfered. They'll retaliate, Ramon said finally. Against who? They don't know who we are. They know someone cut Elena down. They know someone took her. And they know enough to come back looking. Ramon's eyes went to the closed door where Maria and her mother waited. They'll go to the places she might run. Her home, her work, people she knows. We have her here. She's protected. For now. But we can't keep her forever, and they'll wait. Ramon's jaw set with decision. No, waiting gives them time to regroup, to plan, to bring in reinforcements. What are you suggesting? Ramon met Diego's eyes, and in that gaze was the cold calculation of a man who'd built an empire on decisiveness. We go back tonight. We find them before they find us. Diego didn't smile, but something like satisfaction crossed his features. I'll tell Mateo to prep. Full gear. This won't be a conversation. Understood. As Diego left, Ramon returned to the window, looking out at manicured gardens that hid nothing darker than expensive landscaping. The forest remembered what happened in its shadows. Tonight, it would remember more. The hunting cabin sat 3 miles northeast of the clearing, hidden behind a wall of pine trees and accessible only by a dirt track that hadn't seen maintenance in years. It was the kind of place people came to disappear either by choice or by force. Smoke curled from a rusted metal chimney, gray against the darkening sky. Golden light spilled through gaps in the shuttered windows. Inside, voices rose and fell in heated conversation, occasionally punctuated by the crack of beer bottles being opened or furniture being kicked. Ramon observed all of this from the tree line, crouched in absolute stillness 50 yards from the structure. Beside him, Diego scanned the perimeter through night vision binoculars while Mateo circled around to cover the back exit. They'd left Victor at the safe house with strict instructions to protect Elena and Maria at all costs. This was different work. This required a different kind of focus. 4 targets confirmed, Diego whispered, his breath barely visible in the cold evening air. All armed. 2 rifles visible, probably more we can't see. They're agitated, lot of movement, lot of shouting. Ramon watched the cabin with predatory patience. The structure was old but solid, thick logs, minimal windows, 1 primary entrance and 1 rear exit. Defensible if you knew it was coming, a trap if you didn't. They're scared, Ramon observed quietly. Good reason to be. They came back and found their friends gone. Not just gone. Vanished. No blood trail, no bodies, no evidence. That's worse than finding corpses. At least corpses give you answers. Through the gaps in the shutters, Ramon could see shadows moving, men pacing, gesturing emphatically. 1 shadow was larger than the others, dominating the space with aggressive body language. The leader, most likely. The one making decisions. We could burn them out, Diego suggested. Old cabin like that would go up fast. Too loud, too visible. Smoke would draw attention. Ramon's eyes never left the structure. We walk in. We control the situation. We make them understand what happens when you hang innocent women from trees. Diego lowered the binoculars. You want them alive? I want them to answer questions first. And then, Ramon didn't answer. He didn't need to. Mateo's voice crackled quietly through the radio earpiece. In position. Back door is secured. No activity on this side. Ramon touched his own earpiece. Hold until my signal. Nobody leaves. Copy. Ramon checked his weapon, a matte black pistol that had seen enough use to feel like an extension of his hand. Diego did the same, his movements automatic and efficient. They'd done this before, not often, because Ramon preferred to build empires rather than tear down small operations. But sometimes examples needed to be made. Sometimes the forest demanded blood. On 3, Ramon said. They moved like smoke through the trees, closing the distance in seconds. Ramon's approach was direct, no stealth, no subtlety. He walked up to the front door and kicked it open with enough force to tear the old hinges half off the frame. The door slammed inward. 4 men inside jumped to their feet, hands reaching for weapons that wouldn't matter now. Ramon stepped through the threshold, his pistol raised and steady. Diego followed 1 step behind, covering the right side of the room while Ramon held the left. Don't, Ramon said quietly. The word carried more weight than a shout. All 4 men froze, their hands hovering near rifles propped against walls or pistols tucked into waistbands. They were rough men, scarred faces, hardened expressions, the kind who'd spent lives operating in spaces where law didn't reach, but they recognized death when it walked through their door. The largest man, the leader, stood near a battered wooden table covered with beer bottles and what looked like a map. He was maybe 40, with a thick beard and a snake tattoo eating its own tail on his left hand, the same tattoo Maria had described. His eyes widened with recognition. Not of Ramon specifically, but of the type of man he represented. Professional, calm, absolutely certain. Who the hell are you? The leader demanded, though his voice carried less conviction than his words suggested. The man who cut Elena Smith down from your tree, Ramon replied evenly. The temperature in the cabin dropped. The 4 men exchanged glances, fear mixing with confusion, mixing with the beginning of understanding. That wasn't your business, the leader said, his hand inching toward a pistol on his hip. Diego's weapon shifted fractionally. The movement was tiny but impossible to miss. The man's hand stopped. You hung a woman from a tree and left her child to watch, Ramon continued, his voice still quiet, still controlled. You made it everyone's business. She owed a debt. To who? The leader's jaw worked silently. His eyes darted to the other 3 men, one with a red bandana around his neck who stood near the fireplace, one younger with a poorly healed scar across his cheek sitting at the table, and one older with gray in his beard leaning against the far wall. None of them looked eager to speak. I asked you a question, Ramon said. And now there was something in his voice that made the cabin feel smaller. To who? Castellano, the leader finally spat. Victor Castellano. She worked at his club, skimmed from the register. $3,000, over 6 months. Ramon processed this. Victor Castellano was a mid-level operator, ran protection rackets and illegal gambling on the east side of the territory. Small time but vicious. The kind who compensated for lack of power with excessive brutality. And Castellano sent you to make an example. He sent us to send a message. You don't steal from the family. The family? Ramon repeated. And something like amusement touched his features. Victor Castellano doesn't represent any family I recognize. He's a parasite feeding on people who can't fight back. And who the hell are you? The leader demanded again, anger starting to overtake fear. Ramon took a single step forward. Just one. But it was enough to make all 4 men tense. I'm the man who's going to explain something to you very carefully, Ramon said. And you're going to listen, because your life depends on understanding what I'm about to say. The cabin fell completely silent except for the crackle of fire in the hearth and the distant sound of wind through pine trees. You made a mistake tonight, Ramon continued. A fatal one. The man with the red bandana shifted nervously. Look, we were just following orders. You hung a woman from a tree. Ramon's voice cut through the excuse like a blade. You terrorized a child. You laughed while you did it. How the hell do you? Maria told me everything, every detail, every word you said. The men exchanged worried glances now. If the girl had talked, if she'd survived, if she'd reached someone with resources, the leader's face hardened. Then you know we were sent by someone bigger than us. You kill us, Castellano will come looking. Ramon's expression didn't change. Let him. The silence that followed Ramon's words stretched like a wire pulled too tight, ready to snap. The leader's face darkened, anger warring with the survival instinct that told him he was standing on the edge of something irreversible. You think you can just walk in here and— I already did, Ramon interrupted, his tone unchanged. Now answer my questions. How many of you were there when you hung Elena Smith? The leader's jaw clenched. I don't have to tell you. Diego's weapon shifted, the barrel now pointing directly at the man's chest. The message was clear. 7, the younger man with the scar blurted out, his voice cracking. There were 7 of us total. The leader shot him a murderous glare, but the damage was done. Ramon's eyes moved to the young man. Names. I don't know all their— Yes, you do. The young man swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. He looked at his companions, saw no support coming, and made the calculation that cooperation might buy him minutes he wouldn't otherwise have. Me Tommy, that's Jake. He nodded toward the leader. Red over there is Chris. Old man is Pete. The 3 who aren't here are Vic, Danny, and Mitch. Where are Vic, Danny, and Mitch? Ramon asked, though he already knew the answer. Silence, heavy and damning. They didn't come back from the woods, Jake finally said, his voice tight. You know that already. Whatever you did to them. They received exactly what they earned, Ramon said simply. The same mercy they showed Elena Smith, which was none, Diego added from behind him. Jake's hand twitched toward his weapon again. It was instinct more than strategy, the desperate movement of a cornered animal. But Ramon was faster than instinct. His pistol barked once, the sound deafening in the enclosed space. The bullet slammed into the wooden table 6 inches from Jake's hand, sending splinters flying. Everyone froze. The next one doesn't miss, Ramon said calmly, as if he'd simply cleared his throat instead of firing a weapon. Sit down, all of you. For a moment, no one moved. Then Pete, the older man against the wall, slowly lowered himself into a chair near the fireplace. Tommy followed, his hands raised slightly in surrender. Chris with the red bandana hesitated but eventually dropped onto a stool by the window. Jake remained standing, defiance written across his features even as fear bled through his eyes. Sit, Ramon repeated. Or what? You'll kill me? You're going to do that anyway. Maybe. But sitting gives you a few more minutes to make your case for why I shouldn't. Jake's laugh was bitter and humorless. You're not here for conversation. You're here to clean up loose ends. I'm here, Ramon said, because a little girl ran barefoot down a road, begging for someone to save her mother. And when I found that mother hanging from a tree with rope cutting into her wrists, I made a decision about what kind of men deserved to walk away from that moment. He paused, letting the weight settle. You're not those men. The cabin fell silent again except for the crackle of the fire. Outside, darkness had fully claimed the forest. Mateo's voice whispered through Ramon's earpiece. Still clear on my end. No movement. Jake finally sat, but his posture remained rigid, coiled. Castellano gave us orders. We followed them. That's how this world works. Following orders doesn't absolve you of choices, Ramon replied. You could have delivered the message 100 different ways. But you chose the cruelest one. You chose terror. You chose to make a child watch her mother suffer. She needed to remember it, Jake shot back. That's the whole point of a message. Make it memorable, make it stick. Then this will stick, Ramon said quietly. What happens next? This will be the message that lasts. Chris spoke up from his position by the window, his voice shaking slightly. Look, man, we didn't know anyone would care. Elena Smith is nobody. She's a waitress who got greedy. In our world, that has consequences. In my world, Ramon said, hanging women from trees has consequences too. Tommy, the youngest, couldn't stay quiet any longer. We're sorry, okay? We'll leave. We'll tell Castellano the job is done, that she's dead. Whatever you want, we'll disappear. You'll never see us again. Diego made a sound that might have been a laugh if it had contained any warmth. Ramon studied Tommy for a long moment. The kid was maybe 25. Still had fear in his eyes that hadn't been fully replaced by the callousness that marked the others. But he'd been there. He'd participated. Regret wasn't the same as innocence. Elena Smith is alive, Ramon said. Her daughter is alive. They're under my protection now. Which means the message Castellano wanted to send failed completely. Jake's face twisted with rage. Then he'll just send someone else. You think protecting 2 nobodies is worth starting a war? I don't start wars, Ramon replied. I end them. He pulled out his phone with his free hand, keeping his weapon trained steadily on Jake. A few quick taps, then he turned the screen so the men could see it. It was a photograph-grainy security camera footage showing Victor Castellano entering a restaurant downtown. Timestamp, 3 hours ago. Your boss doesn't know what happened today, Ramon said. He doesn't know you failed. He doesn't know I'm involved. Right now, he's having dinner, making plans, completely unaware that his operation is about to collapse. You can't touch Castellano, Jake said, but his voice had lost its conviction. He's got connections, protection, people who'll... Everyone has connections until they don't, Ramon interrupted. Everyone feels untouchable until someone touches them. He pocketed the phone and straightened. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to give you a choice, which is more than you gave Elena Smith. The 4 men waited, barely breathing. Option 1. You tell me everything about Castellano's operation. Where he operates, who he works with, where he keeps his money, who protects him. You give me every detail. And maybe you walk out of here alive. And option 2? Pete asked from near the fireplace. Ramon's expression didn't change. There is no option 2. Jake laughed bitterly. So, it's not really a choice. It's more of a choice than you gave a woman begging for her life while her daughter watched. The truth of that landed like a physical blow. Even Chris looked away, shame or something close to it flickering across his features. Clock's ticking, Diego said softly. Tommy broke first. Castellano operates out of the Paradise Club on 7th. He's got warehouse space in the industrial district where he runs card games and... Shut up! Jake roared, lurching to his feet. Ramon's weapon tracked him instantly. Sit. Down. We're dead anyway. Don't you get that? We talk. Castellano kills us. We don't talk. You kill us. There's no way out. There's always a way out, Ramon said. Sometimes it's just narrower than you'd like. Dawn was breaking when Ramon returned to the safe house, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink that seemed almost obscene after the night's work. Diego drove while Mateo sat in the back, cleaning his weapon with methodical precision. None of them spoke. There was nothing left to say. The cabin in the woods would never hold voices again. The forest had its silence back, and 4 men who'd thought themselves untouchable had learned the final lesson about consequences. Ramon had made his choice, the same choice he always made when mercy and justice stood on opposite sides of a line. Some lines weren't meant to be crossed. Victor met them at the door, his expression neutral but his eyes asking questions his mouth wouldn't voice in front of the others. Ramon gave the slightest nod, enough to communicate that everything necessary had been handled. Nothing more. Status? Ramon asked quietly. Elena is awake, lucid, asking about her daughter. Victor paused. And asking about you. Ramon removed his suit jacket, noting the dirt on the sleeves, a small tear near the shoulder. He handed it to Diego, who disappeared to dispose of it properly. Some evidence didn't need to exist. Maria, asleep in the chair beside her mother's bed, wouldn't leave. Hasn't left since you departed. Ramon nodded, moving through the elegant hallway toward the medical wing. His footsteps were silent on the marble floors, years of practice making stealth a reflex. He paused outside the partially open door, observing before entering. Elena Smith lay propped against pillows, her wrists wrapped in clean white bandages that stood out stark against her pale skin. An IV drip fed into her left arm. Her dark hair had been washed and braided by one of the medical staff. She looked fragile but alive, definitively. Undeniably alive. Maria slept curled in the oversized chair beside the bed, Victor's suit jacket still draped over her small frame like a blanket. Her face was peaceful in sleep, the terror finally released from her features. One hand extended across the small gap between chair and bed, fingers intertwined with her mother's. Elena's eyes found Ramon in the doorway. She didn't flinch, didn't look away, just studied him with an intensity that suggested she was trying to reconcile the man who'd saved her life with the type of man who could do such things. Ramon entered quietly, closing the door behind him but leaving it unlocked. Never trap yourself in a room without exit options. Mr. Ortega. Elena's voice was hoarse but steady. Mrs. Smith. Just Elena. A pause. Maria told me what happened, what you did, what you're doing. Ramon moved to stand near the window, maintaining distance. Close enough to hear, far enough to give her space. She shouldn't have had to tell you anything. She's a child. She's my child. And she saved my life by running to you. She saved your life by being brave enough to ask for help. I just happened to be there. Elena made a sound that might have been a laugh, if it hadn't hurt so much. You don't strike me as a man who's anywhere by accident. Ramon didn't deny it. The truth was complicated. He'd been returning from a meeting in the Northern Territory, taking back roads to avoid traffic and attention. The fog, the empty road, the timing. Perhaps it was fate. Perhaps it was simply mathematics. He didn't believe in providence, but he acknowledged probability. The men who hurt you won't return, Ramon said simply. Elena's eyes searched his face. Because they're dead. It wasn't a question. Ramon didn't confirm or deny. The silence was answer enough. Good, Elena whispered, and there was steel beneath the fragility. I hope they suffered. They understood their mistake before the end. Elena nodded slowly, processing this. Her fingers tightened around Maria's hand, the unconscious gesture of a mother who'd come too close to losing everything. What happens now? She asked. Maria said we're under your protection. But protection from what? If those men are gone, they worked for someone. Victor Castellano. He sent them to make an example of you for a debt he claimed you owed. Elena's face went pale. $3,000. I didn't steal it. I was short on the register 3 times, and he called it theft. I offered to pay him back, to work extra shifts, anything, but he said examples needed to be made. Castellano won't be making examples anymore. You're going after him. Again, not a question. I'm going to have a conversation with him about reconsidering his business practices. That's not a conversation. That's... Elena stopped, looking at her daughter's sleeping face. Will Maria and I be safe? Yes. How can you be sure? Because I'm very good at making sure. Elena studied him for a long moment, this dangerous man in expensive clothes, who'd appeared from the fog like something out of a dark fairy tale. A monster who'd saved them from other monsters. Why? She finally asked. Why help us? You don't know us. We're nobody to you. Ramon was quiet, considering how to answer a question he'd asked himself during the drive back. Why had he stopped? Why had he acted without hesitation? He'd built an empire on calculated decisions, cold pragmatism, strategic thinking. Mercy wasn't part of that architecture. But then he'd seen Maria's face. The terror, the hope, the desperate faith that anyone would care enough to act. My sister was 8 years old when she died, Ramon said quietly, the words surprising him as much as Elena. He rarely spoke of Sophia, never to strangers. Someone hurt her, and no one stopped them because no one thought a poor girl from nowhere mattered enough to risk anything for. Elena's expression shifted, understanding blooming behind her eyes. I was 14, Ramon continued. Too young to do anything, too weak to matter. I swore that if I ever had power, I'd use it differently, that if I saw someone being hurt, someone defenseless, I'd be the one who stopped it. And you kept that promise. When I can, Maria stirred slightly in her sleep, murmuring something unintelligible before settling again. Both adults watched her, this child who'd survived a nightmare and would carry those scars forever. Thank you, Elena whispered, for stopping, for listening, for... Her voice broke. For giving her back her mother. Ramon nodded once, uncomfortable with gratitude. It wasn't why he did things. Results mattered more than recognition. You'll stay here until you're healed, he said, returning to practical matters. My people will arrange new housing for you somewhere Castellano's network doesn't reach. New identification if necessary. A fresh start. We can't afford. It's handled, Mr. Ortega. It's handled, he repeated firmly. Consider it payment for information. You worked at Castellano's club. You know his operations, his patterns, his weaknesses. That's valuable intelligence. Elena understood what he was doing, giving her a way to accept help without charity, maintaining her dignity while ensuring her safety. She nodded slowly. I'll tell you everything I know. Later. Rest first. Heal. Ramon moved toward the door, then paused. Elena, what happened to you? It wasn't your fault. You didn't deserve it, and the men responsible won't hurt anyone else. Because of you. Because they made the wrong choice. He left before she could respond, closing the door quietly behind him. Victor waited in the hallway, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Castellano? Victor asked. Tomorrow night. I want full surveillance, complete schedule, every person he meets with. When I visit him, I want him isolated. Understood. Victor hesitated. Boss. Word will spread about the cabin. Let it. 3 days passed in the safe house like time held in suspension. Elena grew stronger, the color returning to her face, the trembling in her hands gradually subsiding. The doctors reduced her pain medication, encouraged her to walk short distances, checked her healing wounds with satisfied nods. Maria never strayed far from her mother's side. She'd wake from nightmares, gasping, reaching out in the darkness until her fingers found Elena's hand. Then she'd breathe again, remember she was safe, and curl back into sleep. Ramon visited twice daily, morning and evening brief check-ins that lasted no more than 5 minutes. He'd ask about Elena's recovery, ensure Maria had everything she needed, then disappear back into whatever business consumed his days. He never stayed long enough for comfort to develop, never allowed familiarity to soften the necessary distance between savior and saved. On the third evening, Elena asked to speak with him privately. Victor led Maria to the kitchen for dinner, leaving mother and potential benefactor alone in the medical room that had become Elena's temporary world. She sat upright now without assistance, her bandaged wrists resting in her lap like white flags of surrender to circumstances beyond her control. "I told Victor everything I know about Castellano," Elena said without preamble. "His schedule, his contacts, the people he pays off, the places he feels safest. Everything." Ramon nodded. "I know," Victor briefed me. "Then you have what you need. You don't need us anymore." It wasn't accusatory, just factual. A woman who'd learned that usefulness often determined value. "You're not here because you're useful," Ramon replied quietly. "You're here because you're healing. We can't stay forever. This isn't our world. We don't belong in places with marble floors and armed guards." And Elena gestured vaguely at the luxury surrounding them. Where do you belong?" The question seemed to catch her off guard. "I don't know anymore. Not at my old apartment. Castellano knows where that is. Not at the diner. Same problem. Nowhere feels safe now. That's why you'll go somewhere new. Somewhere Castellano's influence doesn't reach. And live how? I'm a waitress with a high school education and a daughter to feed. Fresh starts require money I don't have." Ramon had anticipated this conversation. "Victor has arranged employment for you. Restaurant management position, good salary, benefits. It's 3 hours north, small city, quiet. Maria's school enrollment is handled. First and last month's rent on an apartment is paid." Elena stared at him. "Why would you do this?" "Because letting you survive just to struggle isn't actually saving you. But we're strangers. You don't owe us." "I don't think in terms of debt," Ramon interrupted. "I think in terms of completion. I started something when I cut you down from that tree. This is how it finishes." Elena's eyes glistened, but no tears fell. She'd cried enough for a lifetime in the past few days. "What about Castellano? If he finds out we're alive, if he discovers you were involved, he won't be finding anything." The certainty in Ramon's voice made Elena pause. "You're really going to—" "I'm going to have a conversation with him about reconsidering his priorities. What happens after that conversation depends entirely on how well he listens." "Maria asked me if you were a good man or a bad man." Elena's voice was soft, contemplative. "I didn't know how to answer." "What did you tell her?" "That you were the man who saved us. That sometimes that's all that matters." Ramon considered this. Good and bad were abstractions for people with the luxury of distance from violence. He'd stopped believing in simple moral categories the day Sophia died. Now he believed in action and consequence, cause and effect. "Your daughter is brave," he said finally. "She ran toward danger to save you. That kind of courage is rare. She shouldn't have needed to be brave. She should be worried about homework and friends and normal 8-year-old problems." Elena's voice cracked slightly. "I failed her. You survived. That's not failure. I put her in that position. My debt, my choices, Castellano's choices," Ramon corrected firmly. "His decision to escalate, his order to make an example. You didn't hang yourself from that tree. You didn't traumatize your daughter. He did." Elena absorbed this, wanting to believe it, struggling against the weight of maternal guilt that insisted she should have protected Maria from ever seeing such horror. "When do we leave?" she asked quietly. "When you're ready. Another few days, maybe. The doctors want to ensure infection hasn't set in, that you can manage without daily monitoring. And then we just disappear? Start over like none of this happened? You don't forget, you don't pretend it didn't happen, but you build something new anyway. That's what survival looks like." Maria's laughter drifted from the kitchen, genuine, bright, the sound of a child remembering how to be a child. Both adults turned toward it like plants seeking sun. "She likes Victor," Elena said with the ghost of a smile. "Follows him around asking questions. He's surprisingly patient with her. Victor has children, 2 daughters. He understands. Does he understand what you do? What you are?" Ramon met her eyes. He understands that the world has shadows, and sometimes the only thing that stops monsters is someone willing to be more monstrous. Is that what you are? A monster? I'm what I need to be. Elena studied him, this enigmatic man who'd crashed into her worst moment and somehow become the axis around which her survival spun. She wanted to understand him, to categorize him, to make sense of someone who existed outside conventional morality. But maybe understanding wasn't necessary. Maybe acceptance was enough. Thank you, she said simply. Whatever you are, whatever happens next, thank you for stopping. Thank you for listening to my daughter when you could have just driven away. Ramon stood, preparing to leave. He'd stayed longer than intended, allowed more conversation than was wise. Attachment complicated things. Distance kept situations clean. Maria ran to me because she had no other choice, he said. But she was right to trust her instincts. Some people are worth saving, and some people are worth the risk of saving them? Ramon paused at the door. Yes, he left before Elena could respond, before gratitude could become expectation, before mercy could transform into relationship. In the hallway, Maria nearly collided with him, Victor following behind with an apologetic expression. Mr. Ortega! Maria's face lit up with uncomplicated joy. Victor taught me a card game. I won 3 times. He probably let you win. Did not. Maria protested, then looked uncertainly at Victor, who maintained perfect neutrality. Ramon almost smiled. Almost. Instead, he placed a hand briefly on Maria's shoulder, the closest thing to affection he'd allow himself. Take care of your mother, he said. I will. Are you leaving? For now. But you'll come back? Ramon looked down at this brave, traumatized child who'd run through fog and terror to save her mother, who'd placed her faith in a stranger's mercy and been proven right. I'll come back, he promised. It was more than he usually gave, more than he should have given. But some promises, once made, couldn't be unmade. The forest road looked different in daylight, less ominous, less otherworldly, just a stretch of asphalt cutting through ordinary trees under an ordinary sky. The fog had burned away, leaving everything sharp and clear and strangely disappointing in its normalcy. Ramon stood beside his Mercedes, engine idling quietly behind him. Diego and Mateo waited in the car, giving him this moment alone. Victor had stayed at the safe house with Elena and Maria, maintaining the security that had become routine over the past week. A week. That's all it had been since a little girl had materialized from the mist and changed the trajectory of multiple lives with 4 desperate words. They hung my mom on a tree. Ramon looked toward the tree line where they'd entered the forest that morning. The trail was still there if you knew where to look, still marked by disturbed undergrowth and broken branches, but nature was already reclaiming it, erasing evidence that anything unusual had occurred. The forest kept its secrets. Victor Castellano would keep his too now permanently. The conversation Ramon had promised happened 2 nights ago in the back room of the Paradise Club. It had been brief, direct, and concluded with Castellano understanding exactly how his operation would change moving forward, or rather, how it would end. The club was closed now, shuttered and silent. Castellano's network had collapsed like a house of cards without his hand holding it together. The people he'd terrorized quietly celebrated their liberation. The authorities asked no questions about his sudden disappearance. Some absences improved neighborhoods. Maria and Elena were leaving today. Victor would drive them to their new home, help them settle in, ensure they had everything needed to begin again. Ramon wouldn't be there for the goodbye. Goodbyes created attachments, and attachments created complications. He'd said what needed saying. The rest was execution. His phone buzzed. A message from Victor. They're asking for you. Ramon typed back. Tell them I had business. Tell them to be safe. A pause. Then, Maria says thank you. Elena says. She says she'll never forget. Ramon pocketed the phone without responding. Memory was inevitable. People didn't forget the moments that broke them or saved them. Elena and Maria would carry this experience forever. The trauma and the rescue, the horror and the mercy, intertwined so completely they'd never fully separate one from the other. That was the weight of survival. You carried everything with you. A second vehicle pulled up behind Ramon's Mercedes, a nondescript sedan driven by one of his associates. The woman behind the wheel nodded respectfully. She'd been briefed, knew her assignment. Monitor the road, watch for anyone showing unusual interest in the area, report anything suspicious. The forest would be watched for the next month, just to be certain. Ramon returned to his car, sliding into the back seat. Diego met his eyes in the rearview mirror. Back to the city, boss? Yes. The Mercedes pulled away smoothly, leaving the forest road behind. Ramon watched it recede through the rear window, that stretch of asphalt, where everything had changed and nothing had changed. He'd saved 2 lives, ended several others, dismantled a small criminal operation, created a minor power vacuum that someone would inevitably try to fill. The world kept turning. "The girl will be okay," Diego said quietly. Not a question, but not quite a statement either. "She's strong, stronger than she should have to be. Like someone else I know." Ramon didn't respond to that. Comparisons between his childhood and Maria's were inevitable but imperfect. He'd had no one to run to when Sofia died. No stranger appearing from the fog to offer mercy and protection. He'd been alone. Maria wasn't. That made all the difference. The city appeared on the horizon, steel and glass and 1,000 complications waiting for Ramon's attention. Business didn't pause for acts of mercy. Empires required constant maintenance. People depended on his decisions, his authority, his willingness to do what others couldn't. But as the Mercedes merged into traffic and the forest disappeared completely behind them, Ramon felt something unusual settle in his chest. Not quite satisfaction, not quite peace. Something adjacent to both. He'd kept his promise to his 14-year-old self. When he'd seen someone defenseless being hurt, someone who mattered even though the world pretended otherwise, he'd stopped it. Sofia would never know. But somehow, it still mattered that he'd tried. His phone buzzed again. This time a photo from Victor. Maria and Elena standing in front of their new apartment building. Maria grinning widely while Elena smiled with tentative hope. The little girl held a piece of paper with large, careful letters. "Thank you, Mr. Ortega." Ramon stared at the image for a long moment, then saved it to his phone and powered the device off. Some moments didn't need responses. They just needed to exist. "Diego," Ramon said quietly. "Yes, boss? If anyone ever asks about what happened on that forest road, nothing happened. We were never there." Good. The Mercedes carried them deeper into the city, back to the world of calculated moves and controlled violence, of power maintained through reputation and strategic brutality. Ramon would return to being what he'd always been, a man feared, respected, and carefully avoided by anyone with sense. But somewhere 3 hours north, a little girl would grow up knowing that once, when it mattered most, a dangerous stranger had chosen mercy over convenience, and her mother would live to see her grow. That was enough. The forest road behind them stood empty now, waiting for the next traveler, the next story. The oak tree remained, its branches spreading wide. Rope marks still visible if you looked closely enough. But the horror was gone. The cruelty had been answered. The balance, however imperfect, had been restored. The road remembered everything. It always would. But memory without consequence was just history. And history, Ramon knew, belonged to whoever survived long enough to write it. Elena and Maria Smith had survived. That was the only history that mattered. Thanks for staying with this story right till the final moment. You're the reason these stories come alive. If you're ready for another powerful journey, just tap the next video on your screen. And before you go, leave a quick comment and rate this story from 1 to 10. I'm excited to see your thoughts and connect with you down there.
Все равно, сути дела не меняет, как говорится, зарплата плюс-минус везде там, больше, чуть меньше. И, наверное, это все, вот эта общая ситуация, наверное, у многих привела, во-первых, сфера развлечений, да, всякие там кредиты и так далее, настолько загоняют каждого в задницу человека. И об этом на самом деле никто так-то не говорит. Какое количество сейчас, допустим, даже в те же сложные времена такие, когда вот сейчас идет там специальная военная операция, да, где люди вообще умирают, в принципе, за какую-то сумму денег. То есть какая мотивация, то есть у мужика идти типа на войну, воевать и заработать денег? Потому что он вот в обычной жизни не понимает, типа, как реализовать себя. Он понимает, что он может пойти работать на какую-то работу, где зарплаты его все равно не будет хватать. Тут тоже двойственная сторона. Хорошо, когда она есть, плохо, когда ее нету. Да, вот это маленькая даже зарплаты. Но морально-то ты все равно подавлен. Ты понимаешь, да, я там пойду туда, смысла мне этого не принесет большого. Да, у меня там станет, если я вообще не работаю, и буду работать за 50 тысяч. Хорошо, что они у меня есть, я смогу там покушать себе купить. Но это же дизмораль. Когда ты заходишь в интернет и видишь, как люди там в Дубае летают, покупают себе огромное количество автомобилей какие-то. Ну, много всего такого, что ты за эту зарплату себе никогда в жизни позволить не сможешь. И как человеку оставаться морально типа сильным? Что ему нужно делать? Ну, наверное, во-первых, это, наверное, все от семьи исходит, да? То есть, какая семья у тебя, как она построена. Если ты один живешь, это сложно, да, ты будешь сам себя, но у тебя, опять-таки, возможно, ну, родители, если есть, которые друзья поддержат тебя в какой-то момент, хотя бы просто отвлекут тебя от этих мыслей. А если у тебя, к примеру, там, семья, жена, к примеру, да, есть дети, то тут, наверное, поддержка только от них исходит какая-то. Вот. Чтобы не упиваться в своих мыслях о том, что какая нынче сложная жизнь. И, наверное, других-то вариантов, в принципе-то, и нету. Какие вот еще варианты, в принципе, изменить, поменять свою жизнь настолько, чтобы она была, ну, казалась тебе удачной, да, реализованным себя в жизни, в чем-то. В чем, вот как проявляется на самом деле у нас реализованность? Наверное, у 90% случаев это финансовое благополучие, финансовая независимость. Это, наверное, одно из таких ключевых моментов, когда человек, наверное, считает себя реализованным, да, в этой жизни. То есть, как добиться этого? То есть, с учетом того, что даже возьмем нашу страну, да, сколько миллионов людей здесь живет, как каждому добиться этого результата? Непонятно. И с каждым годом просто ситуация становится все хуже и хуже. Все дорожает, люди зарабатывают либо столько же. Ну, даже если они зарабатывают столько же, на самом деле этого все уже недостаточно. К чему это все приведет на самом деле? В оконцове, наверное, мир погрязнет в большую депрессию в какую-то. Какие-то войны, возможно, или еще что-то еще больше глобальных таких вещей, которые не приведут ни к чему хорошему на самом деле. Поддержка каждого человека именно для того, чтобы он держался, наверное, морально, заключается в том, что, ну, наверное, дом, в который ты приходишь, должен быть крепостью твоей. Да, что это единственное должно быть место, где ты будешь чувствовать себя под защитой. Для этого было и придумано, наверное, своя пещера изначально, потом свои какие-то чумы, палатки различные, да, потом все это превратилось. На данный момент это у нас дома, квартиры, в которые мы приходим и должны ощущать себя в безопасности. Чтобы можно быть немного морально расслабленным с учетом того, что ты выходишь каждый день на работу, на улицу, и все равно давление вот это вот, оно все равно присутствует. Когда ты заходишь в магазин, видишь цены эти, да, и так далее, не можешь себе что-то там приобрести, позволить на ежедневной основе, это откладывает большой, наверное, отпечаток. Не, наверное, а точно. И поэтому, когда возвращаясь домой, ты чувствуешь, вот хотя бы есть типа уголок того места, куда ты можешь прийти. Уголок на самом деле человеку много тоже не надо. Можно хотеть большего, но на самом деле человеку одному много не надо. Да? Ему нужно спальное место, спокойное место, где можно подумать. Ну, это когда ты один, к примеру, да? Когда у тебя есть семья, к примеру, ты приходишь домой, опять-таки, тут хотя бы, да, поговорить о каких-то вещах. Просто об отрешенных вещах, наверное. И, возможно, при этих же условиях у тебя и появляется какая-то дополнительная мотивация для реализации себя. А когда у тебя нету ничего, вот это уже становится проблемой. И это у многих на самом деле. Что значит не иметь ничего? Тут, наверное, самое главное, дизмораль у человека еще возникает при том, что это уже, наверное, где-то в глубине души даже она возникает при даже хорошей финансовой подушке такой, которая у тебя есть, хороших финансовых деньгах, да, то есть, но нету вот внутреннего ощущения, к примеру, дружбы, семьи, любви и так далее. Это уже отдельно на самом деле разговор, потому что мы, вот, к примеру, можем взять, как сейчас вот Мелстрой, если кто-то смотрит, насколько тяжело обладать такими финансами и не иметь, по сути, ничего. Ни друзей, ничего не иметь. Так главное, это получается для бедных главное деньги, для богатых главное какое-то внутреннее ощущение нужности, не из-за денег. Вот такое вот. И это борьба какая-то такая и вот эти два слоя общества, богатые и бедные, они друг друга не понимают. На самом деле из-за этого, возможно. Потому что богатый человек, он уже не смотрит на деньги, он не считает эти деньги. Ему важно внутреннее вот это вот ощущение того, что он нужен без них даже. Это как Тони Старку сказали: а кто ты без костюма? На вот это я филантроп, тудым-сюдым, он сказал, да? Так и человеку, у которого много денег, ты задашь вопрос: а кто ты без денег? Ну, что ты представляешь себе без денег? Вот и это, наверное, возможно, таких людей богатых, как вот, например, там Мелстрой, задав ему этот вопрос: а кто ты без денег? Он на него ответить-то и не сможет. Обратная сторона людей бедных, да, вот если мы посмотрим, человеку